Welcome to the MindBod Adventure Pod, where every week we dive into a different practice, a different perspective on life, and you try it out with us. Join us on Substack at mindbodpod.com to watch this episode as a video podcast. And if you want to support our crazy adventures and get fun perks and exclusives along the way, join us as a paid subscriber. Now, onto this week's adventure.
Welcome to the MindBod Adventure Pod. I am your co-host, Jeff Warren, and with me here is
Tasha Schumann.
Okay, so we're excited for this one because with us here is Chela Davison.
Woo, woo, woo!
Chela Davison is a very interesting character whom I first became aware of through Sebene Selassie. Sebene Selassie is a phenomenal meditation teacher and thinker and writer. And she said Chela really helped her with her business, with rethinking her offerings in the world and
Her
calling in the world. Indeed, calling is going to be a key word for us here. So who is this Chela person? Well, she has been coaching people from an integral perspective, coaching artists, contemplatives, practitioners, entrepreneurs for like 15 years. And now she's blowing up her whole life and moving more into more performance. And she's a phenomenal, hilarious writer, comedian. How would you introduce yourself? And welcome, by the way, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. How would I would introduce myself as, hi, I'm Chela. I'm in a massive pivot. I'm a room lubricator and all those other things. Yeah.
I forgot to mention room lubricator.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Awesome. Yeah. So just what you said, like I've been in this really kind of outrageous, super fun, self-expressed shift in my work, which my work for 15 years has been about helping people know their calling, meet their calling, realize their calling through developmental practice. And then a few years ago, I was like, I got some other callings that are calling. So I better answer them or I'm like soups out of integrity. So then I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should say also that I'm working with you. You've been super helpful for me. We've had a bunch of sessions on kind of rethinking what I do. And it's very much putting it into that calling framework. Like, is this the best use of my skills, my talents, my gifts? Where am I coming up against impediments that I don't need to be? How can I clarify this? How can I kind of put this in a much larger ground? And it's been really helpful. And so that's kind of, I think, part of what you were thinking today is that we're going to kind of take our listeners and Tasha and I through a process about kind of thinking about your big life, your calling and where we are in that and how to move through that more effectively and more joyfully.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do that. Let's do that.
Okay. So start us off.
Well, first, I'd love to just like contextualize calling a little bit without yammering on forever. So one of the contexts I think that's really important to acknowledge when we talk about having a calling, some people will enter that with purpose, but that we live under capitalism. And it's really, really hard to separate call from capitalism. But I like to try to do that because a lot of times when people think about calling or they think about vocation, it's like, what's that sweet spot of what I'm going to do that's going to make me money? And like, that's what I help people do. And it's also kind of awful. Like not the what I help people do part, but to try to do things under capitalism. And sometimes it works. Like sometimes we have a call and it happens to be something that can make you great money. And isn't that great? But it's not always that. And so over the last decade plus of working with people, what I do and how we play is like this interwoven exploration and practice of inner work and outer work. And so how are we growing and developing our interiority, our skills and capacities, our ways of seeing and perceiving ourselves in the world? And then how are we enacting that so that we can take the gifts that we've been given, the gifts that we grow and develop, the things that matter to us, that we're passionate about, the kind of deepest pulse of who we are, and then express that in the world in a way that contributes, in a way that, we feel like we're of service and we belong.
And sometimes that will be supported financially and sometimes it won't. But what matters is that you're in the stream of your calling and feeling like you kind of belong here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that's been really cool for me in this pivot that I've named is like I've made really good money in the call of my calling being about helping other people develop their calling, which was like deep and true and passionate and aligned for a very long time. And then when pivoting and following this other thing, it's like, let's see if this artist thing works, And yet I'm the happiest, most alive, most self-expressed, most connected I've ever been in my life, or at least kind of cyclically matches the other times that I've really been in the stream. And so the financial remuneration is like, obviously we've all got to pay our things, but it's not the only thing. And so part of what I want to do together today is look at what are the different facets or elements of what makes a calling regenerative. Because if we aren't actually finding a way to be filled up, to be resourced, it's really actually hard to pursue the things. Like it's a lot harder when you are in complete survival mode to take risks, to move from a place of passion, to give generously, to create art. And so that tension between the inner and the outer, being resourced and sharing what we've got, all need to be attended to. And if they're attended to, then we can have the experience that we're fulfilling our calling.
This is so relatable. I mean, as you're talking, I'm just thinking of like my own trajectory. Like music and creativity was always, as I was a kid, I was like, I'm going to find a way to use this to sustain myself. And then, there's like capitalism in there already of like, you can't do this unless it makes you money. And just over the course of my career, watching how that soured my relationship with creativity. It's just like, if you are engaging in capitalism without checking yourself, it's just going to sour. You're going to be burnt out.
Yeah.
There's just, I left music for 5 years because I was like, I have to heal my relationship with
I
creativity.
think that's actually why some people separate the two. Like when I first started out as a writer, I had my job over here. That was what supported my money. And then I was going to do this writing and I didn't want to have that pressure on it. And I would do the writing just because I loved to do it. And then it suddenly became something that was, supporting me with money. And then it was like, oh God, then all of a sudden pressure landed on it.
It's so hard because the systems in place for success are, I always say, like, I'm so glad that I gave music my all. And I was like, I am going to be in like the 1% of people whose music career actually succeeds. Right. But then once you're in like creative industries, you realize it's actually run by people who are not creative. It's like run by business people. And so suddenly you're like pushing your creativity into structures that don't nourish it.
That are extractive, right? I think that's the key part that I think you really do need to be aware of, especially around how you're nurturing your creativity, is the structures are extractive, but then we start to, without knowing it, because we're just so swimming in those structures, they become internalized and then we become self-extractive. And so even if you're outside of structures, the pathologies of productivity, my creativity only matters if it is outward facing and not an inward process, if it's getting likes and shares and accolades and making money. And so we externalize the value of creativity and then we internalize the metrics that lead to us extracting of our life force.
And then you have you lose your sense of your own compass. If you're always looking for how it lands in the outer world, you start to even lose your own sense of taste and judgment and discernment.
Yeah. And just to say, when we talk about creativity here, we're not just talking about being an artist. We're talking about this bigger thing is calling and, what you're going to be doing in your life and in the world. And creativity is part of that. And everyone has it. So maybe you could say something about the bigger picture of what we're talking.
Yeah. You know what I actually would love to do first? I'd like to jump straight into a practice and invite our listeners into a practice. And then I'm going to add a little frame around it after so you can kind of locate where you are. Because we're on this pulse of like the way things get soured or the way we kind of get out of alignment, particularly with something that we care about or that's meaningful or we love. And so there's a line that I always pay attention to when I'm coaching people. And it's usually a throwaway line. It's said like at the side of a conversation. It's not the thing that's in the center. And when we turn towards it and center it, it reveals a lot of stuff. So I'm going to say this line in first person. We'll have a moment of pause. So I'm going to invite you to like let the answer to the line just like roll in your head. And we'll just kind of run it a few times from different angles. And then I'd love to hear what you heard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wish I could. If only I could just. I really, really just wanna, you know what matters above all else? That if I could just, okay, friends.
I feel triggered.
Tell me all about it.
Me a little bit too. Me a little bit too at the beginning. It wasn't just that I mean, what I mean by that is, yes, I got to the joyful things I want to offer, but I also got to what's in the way.
Yeah.
Because one of the first things you said was, oh my God, when you said it, it was just like, I want rest. I want
That's
space.
exactly what
I was like, I'm tired. If only I could rest.
Just sleep
Only I
for
could
4
sleep
days.
for a bunch of days and just get space and settle, and then so that my vitality for my offering can then really come through. That was kind of the very first thing. And then I did connect to like either more ebullient, like the kind of joyful things I like to do, the creative collaborations. I kind of felt that, and I was thinking about Tasha and I felt the writing and I felt the teaching in a way that was bubbly. But how about you?
That was my experience as well. And the tone of voice that you use to say the lines triggers different emotions. So the first one you said kind of like lamenting, and I felt grief. I was like, yeah, I just want to rest. And then I was like, okay. On the second one, it's like, what kind of tangible thing is coming out of this? And then I was like, if only I could hire more support. And then it was like, the next one that came out was like, why do I want more support? So then it was like, so that I can play. It was like this, I just want to play. And then I had like images of things I would be playing with, like meditation, creativity. I want to start a band. Jeff and I have all sorts of crazy ideas. Like, and I didn't want to name them as projects. I just was like, I just want to play.
Play distills it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks. Rest and play. Rest and play. Here's what's great when you're like, oh, I'm triggered, or okay, I'm trying to like get to the thing under. That's not a surprise. And it's like how it goes. And so in the frame, there's kind of 4 key elements, and each of those elements hold an entire universe for what helps a calling feel regenerative. And one of them is interiority, meaning, purpose, values, what we're passionate about. It's like the stuff that kind of comes through us. And a lot of times, the purity of that connection is soured by exhaustion, depletion, all the things that we're doing in our adult lives to just handle everything that we've committed to or need to run through. And so what'll often happen when I work with somebody around this part is like, if the meaning element of our calling is not really alive, we will tend to feel disengaged or like, there's just like not quite enough life force here. And often what I see people do is they want to jump to, what's the thing? I want to figure it out. I want clarity. But if what's over top of that is exhaustion and depletion, like, good fucking luck.
Oh my God.
It's
yeah.
really painful, right? Because anything that you imagine, like play or collaborations or making art in this way, it's like, but what's that going to take of me?
Yeah.
Does that resonate for you both?
Absolutely.
Totally. And I can think of a time in my life where I felt the total opposite. Like during COVID lockdown, we were like all locked away for 2 years. And for those of us who were privileged enough to, be able to work from home, I found a lot of the things that exhausted me dropped away. Like there was no way I was going on tour. I wasn't doing interviews. I didn't have to do anything basically that I didn't want to do, and I could stay at home. It was glorious for me. We started this podcast. There was so much play. I started new projects. I started mentoring again and working with nonprofits and stuff. And this whole layer of exhaustion of things that I thought I had to do and that I sort of did have to do lifted, and then meaning just kind of sprang up. And I was like this like unstoppable force for 2 years.
What I'm loving is you're naming an example of like actual physical depletion with the commitments and the amount that we're holding. But there can also be like interior things. So part of what we get to look at is both what are the barriers to us really like accessing the clarity. Purity is kind of a weird word, but I don't know why I feel like saying it, of our self-expression, of our values. And so for me, I wrote a show a few years ago. It started as creative recovery. Like I scaled way back on my business. I was doing like very little worky work. And I was like, I'm just going to go write this show I didn't even think I was going to perform it. It's since taken over my life, and now I'm blowing up my life because of it. But it was just, I just want a creative thing that has nothing to do with my business. But simultaneously, what was happening is I'd left social media entirely. And so I had no inputs crowding out my experience. So it was like this 2.5 year creative, nourishing incubation. I mean, some of it was scaling back on commitments, but it was actually really scaling back on inputs and being able to like be intimate with myself and my meaning.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What I like about what you're describing too is there's a kind of yeah, I found already working with you and thinking about this, I've gotten insights into what's preventing me from going out and doing that. Like certain, like I may have ideas of my own limitations, or I have a thing about having my voice out there in certain areas and not in other areas. Like, what are my hangups? And that's part of what comes through in this exploration is like, well, what's getting in the way? It isn't just that we're tired. It's also that we have a whole psychology that is interacting with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in my work, we would call that our ways of being. And so again, that's where the inner work and the outer work happen is it's like, well, it's not depletion, it's not just barriers, but it's like, how do I see myself? Where do things get scary or risky? Where do I go like, oh, that's not a thing that's for me. I don't do that over here, or that's not safe. And so that's how when I talk about ways of being, some identities start to become cages that we actually need to break free from.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I want to like name a bit more framework. What we just talked about was interiority, meaning, values, how that becomes expressed. And then there's what I like to call, I laugh because you might feel like you're back in high school when I say this, aptitude. Remember aptitude tests? Like the shit you're good at. Yeah. Right. So under the aptitude umbrella, like the kind of acupuncture needle point we're really going for is genius zone. So where you're really moving from your genius zone, but we're not always going to be in our genius zone all the time. I mean, we can grow towards that and look to get the support and develop things in a way where we can be there. But we also have skills and capacities that we can build and develop that help us to really fully express our calling. And then we have ones that maybe we're engaging that we really shouldn't be. I don't know about you, Tasha, but I know for Jeff and me, like if it's administrative operational stuff, like we just have no business doing that. I mean, so for listeners, this is the first thing that I would invite anybody in this particular area to do, which is like really know yourself. And this is why I never hold calling or the exploration of calling as some static thing that you need to find or figure out. You know, when people are like, I need to find my purpose, it's like, I don't think you're going to find that, but you get to uncover it over time. And the best way to do that, particularly in this area of aptitude, skills, capacities, is to really learn about yourself. So it's basically like anything that behaviorally is going to help you carry out your call. It's like how you interface with the world. It's how your human being does things. And so some of that is there will be unseen capacities like emotional capacity, self-regulation, stuff like that, that you are doing that's not necessarily observable, but it actually helps you carry out certain behaviors. And so in the getting to know of ourselves, what I would offer that we do, and this could be something that folks can write down, where I always like to start with folks is what's here, what's here and what's working. I don't know about you. I have a negative bias. It seems like just about everybody does. So we can often look at what's not here yet, what's not being carried out, what I'm missing, what I'm lacking. And so when we start with what's here and what's available that we can leverage, that we can use, that we can build off of, we feel more resourced and we're actually moving from a place of sufficiency. So this is a line, this is not my line. My friend Tina said it and then I stole it and I use it all the time. And it's like, what's the thing you got for free? So if you just start there and often like go way, 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 way back, what's the thing you got for free that you've always had, that you've always been good at? Maybe you've improved on, maybe you've even taken it for granted. Like everybody must be good at this, but no, they're not. It's your unique Tasha-ness. It's your unique Jeff-ness. It's a skill. It's a genius. It's a gift. So first we take stock of our gifts. And then we go, okay, how have I honed those gifts over time so that we're actually in a self-acknowledgement practice. How have I honed those gifts over time? And just like what you might do in this moment to actually practice with it is name one or two ways that you've honed and practiced with this gift. And then inhale in that acknowledgement and appreciation, like what you've actually developed as the tool of Tasha and Jeff. It's like, wow, you've grown that. You inhale in gratitude to you. And exhale, let it settle. And then we bring our attention to the things that didn't come easily, but we've worked at them. We've worked at them. And as we've worked at them, it's helped fill us out. And so scanning back, you might go, oh yeah, that was hard. Oh, and then I worked at it. I worked at it in relationship, in the classroom, in practice. So taking a moment to notice something that you've worked at and then inhaling in appreciation for yourself. Settling into a greater sense of sufficiency. So I'd love to hear from you both for a moment before we talk about what you might build or how you might fill out an aptitude place. Just what have you got? What do you know you've got?
Okay, so focusing on what I got for free, the first thing I thought of was like, okay, creativity, I'm an artist, whatever. And then again, there was like that little grief that snuck in because of the ways that I've overused the gift or taxed it or not held it sacred and all of that. But then I just also kind of went a little bit more core than that. And it was like emotional sensitivity, which is that's what gave rise to me being a creative and a meditator and a meditation guide and all this stuff. And then when you said what's something that didn't come easy, I realized that it's actually this kind of the same thing. It's like hinges on that. It's like I'm a very emotionally sensitive person and somatically sensitive person. And that was a gift, but also it made things really difficult. Like I can be triggered by other people. And so interpersonal relationships might be difficult. And I was like, oh, I worked on that. But it was kind of cool to see that at the root, it was just this one core aliveness that gave rise to really great gifts and also really difficult hurdles.
Yeah, I relate to that. And that, to me, it very much is kind of what the neurodiversity thing. Like, it's this very similar framework to how I think about that, which is that we're all wired in unique ways that have expressed their certain gifts. And then there are often certain limitations. And the more neurodivergent you are, often the more extreme that contrast is, you know? And so for me, it's like, yeah, not unlike Tasha, like, I can see the things that come easily, like creative associations and the capacity to go kind of otherworldly and go into like meditative dream spaces and see very clearly what's going on there and create stories out of them, and loving people and being kind of like enthusiastic about new things and adventure, like all stuff that's kind of connected to being being an ADHDer and to my identity. And then there's the flip side, the things that were hard, which I like that you put things that were hard that we worked on and have gotten better. So the thing for me around uh uh was there anything? I mean, okay, noticing like how I am. You know, I don't think I had a lot of insight actually, even though I would go into these dreamy imaginative
Yeah.
places. When I was young, I didn't really have I was kind of unconscious, just spewing my shit everywhere. And I've had to learn how to notice how I am so that I'm less unconscious. And that meditative development is the learning was hard. You know, it takes a long time. So those are just a couple examples. And even just socially, learning to be more appropriate socially. Like it's one thing to be just kind of in a kind of bipolar way, constantly hypomanically joyful, but then you're just charging over everyone around you. Yeah, and it's like learning how to actually be in relationship instead of just monologuing, or which is an ongoing thing. Like it's why I'm taking this course in relating with James Olivia, like learning
Oh
how to
yeah.
be more just slowing down and tracking my responses and repeating back what I hear from other people. So that's another example.
Beautiful. I love this. Thanks so much for sharing like so fully what is alive. And I'm imagining, I mean, this is obviously why people love you both so much, or part of it. But part of what I hear both of you speaking to from your direct experience, especially around aptitude, is like, we come into this world and then we are these beings. And I see it as we're granted gifts, or we come in with gifts, and some of those might be, you could call it soul. I call it soul. You could call it personality, however you want to frame that, but we come with something. And then we may grow and develop those things and express them. And depending on our context and our family system and the overarching systems we're in, we may have more support in expressing those gifts and who we are, or we may have less. But no matter what context we have, there will be parts of our usness that grow and develop in ways that are helpful. And then we will have parts of our usness that we develop. I always struggle with this word, compensatory. I did it. Patterns around, right? And I heard you both describing both. And so we can grow and develop things that really help us for a period of time. They help us survive. They help us have safety. They help us belong. And then over time, we start to go, oh, these might actually be confining in certain ways or limiting in certain ways. And then if we, again, have the context, have the awareness, have the support, then we go about unraveling some of those things so that we can be more of who we are. And that's part of what I heard you saying there too, Jeff, is it's like, okay, so if I'm going to be just fully my impulses and my gifts, but there's not a lot of conscious awareness around it. It's like, I've always said our gifts start rough. Like every report card I had was just like, Chela has a real way with language. Like, just can this girl shut the fuck up? Like somebody just shut her the fuck up. Like she's too loud. She's doing like, and what I've been able to do with that over time, I had to like really learn how to take my seat and invite other people's expression and listen deeply. And so those were skills that, similar to you, I think, Jeff, I mean, we're very different, but that, it's like, how do you actually hone those over time? And in what ways are those honings actually ways of compensating or become limiting for yourself and others? And then in what ways is that honing liberatory? And I believe that we are in constant cycles of those, that doesn't ever end.
I love this. So we're on this journey about understanding ourselves and our calling. And we started out with kind of an inquiry into what's inherently meaningful for us and what has purpose. And now we're looking at our capacities and gifts. So keep us moving.
Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's a fun one. So that's all good and cool. Like really what both of those territories are is talking about me, right? Like bringing my inner out skillfully, but then how does that actually meet the world?
Just gonna ask for that. Perfect.
Yeah. So the next territory is contribution. You could say contribution, you could say impact, you could say influence, but it's like, now how does this actually interface with the world and have an impact? And is it having the impact or the contribution that I'm hoping it does, that's meaningful to me, that's meaningful to the people that I care about, or the communities that I care about, or the spheres of influence that I care about? So what I thought could be fun is, as a practice. So first, for context for everybody, I think what's really helpful around contribution is sometimes we just don't know. We don't know what contribution we're making. We don't know if what we're intending is having the outcome that we want. Sometimes we think we're making a contribution and we're actually causing harm. And so that we need actual checkpoints that aren't just in here, but are out there with the world to check that.
Do you include in contribution like being a parent and the contribution of raising kids? Because some people are just in that and that's the focus, and the work is just what supports them to do that.
Yes, I love that. And thanks, because that brings, again, especially if we start to narrow our sense of call towards just work, paid work, then we can actually miss that. And so a lot of times, like you had said earlier with your writing, well, you had paid work and then that allowed you to go write in this way. And so parenting, community care, friendships, relationships. So there's all sorts of different ways that we can contribute tangibly or the more intangibles. And to be able to have awareness of those, especially because we are in a culture that really heralds individualism and money. And if we've internalized that culture, which most of us have, we're going to scan for particular things that say certain contributions are more valid than others. There was a while where I was the primary breadwinner, and we could just have a real long conversation where you asked my husband and I all my internalized, it got really gross of the things that, anyway. So we're like, wait a minute, did we just like internalize some things about who's doing the more valuable contributions here, even though consciously what he was holding and doing was like held everything. So checking where we place value unconsciously is really important because we're going to be scanning for contributions. And if we are contributing in ways, especially care work, often those contributions societally within family systems are diminished by the wider culture. Yeah. Thanks for naming that, Jeff. Yeah. Okay. So the integrative practice for all of our listeners is to think about what are the contributions that I really value and how might I check or measure those? Now, for a game, just to switch up, what I would love is for you to engage in an acknowledgement practice.
Mm.
And so the invitation is to take turns naming, this is the unique contribution you bring to my life and you bring to our collaborations. And what I'd love for you to do is go back and forth. So Tasha, you start and you say one thing to Jeff, and then Jeff, breathe it in. So hear it and like actually let it land. And then you say something to Tasha. Tasha, you let it land. And then we're going to go back and forth 3 to 4 times each.
Cool. Okay. Anything goes?
Anything goes. And take your time. Like let yourself really feel what you receive from this person, how they've been contributing to you, and then name it from your heart.
Okay. Jeff, you contribute, I don't know how to say this in words, like a partner in crimeness that wraps around all my weird ideas and gives it like energy, steam, confidence, a sense of not being alone, like this partner in crimeness. That's what you contribute to.
I'll take that in. Thank you. Tasha, you inspire the hell out of me creatively. You are a master of so many creative domains, and you have this way of going into them, whether it's music, drawing, designing, websites, contemplative practices, and the way you go into them is so, you just go into your own world totally happily. And it's like you don't need anyone else's feedback, anyone to affirm and say it's good or it's not good. You have this inner compass in your creativity that is very inspiring.
Thanks. You
Wait.
contribute. Oh, sorry.
Did you fully take that in?
She was thinking about the next thing.
No,
I know she was. No? Okay. I just want to check.
take it in, but
Okay.
because while he was saying it, it's funny what he said to me is actually something that I often experience myself lacking something in because I'm so internal. So it was giving rise to exactly the thing that I was going to say he contributes to me, which is this like anchoring in the outer world. You have this facility and ease with connecting with people like exactly where they are and like so like down to earth that I don't have and that I learn from every single day. So that's why it was it's like on the back of what you said. I was like, oh, you like that about me? Actually, I like this about you for that reason.
Well, and so that made me think of something that I love about you is how fucking cosmic you are. Like I have no friend that has such a facility with being. I mean, being like the kind of broad awareness, being the kind of the spiritual deep end, the stuff that I feel so much passion and interest about, but it's very hard for me to share with anybody or articulate it. And you swim in those waters in a way that I have never encountered with any other friend or almost any other human being. And you do it effortlessly. And it's so I get just hanging out with you is this deep contemplative practice. And then on top of it, you have this hilarious jackass hitting ridiculousness that we get to do it in a really fun, playful way, which sometimes which can involve everything from meditating together to getting fucked up together, or dance parties together, and doing this podcast together. So there's that.
Thanks. Should we keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay.
Oh, really?
One more each. One more each.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing that you contribute to me and to the millions of people who listen to you all the time is this modeling of deep humility. Like everyone goes through shit, and a lot of people who are contemplatives go through shit, but they'll go through it in private because, and I'm guilty of this too, sometimes being like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by something. I'm going to take myself away, deal with it, and then become the expert on it, and then I'll share it with the world. You have this incredible humanness of like modeling what it looks like to go through things, even though you have like decades of practice and you're so brilliant, you never interact with people from like a top down. You're always like, here's the muck I'm in and here's how I'm working through it. It's just like this, you invite other people to be that just loose and comfortable and human, very human.
Thank you. You made me forget what I was gonna say. Okay. So I like asking you what you think about things that are happening in the world, because you have a very clear-eyed justice lens that's very inclusive. You're very understanding of many perspectives, and yet you're also just an amazing activist in the way that you operate. And I feel like I get a very intelligent, balanced take on anything that's happening in my community, in the activist world, in politics, in anything, from just chatting with you. It kind of orients me in that. And I almost to the point where I feel like I almost want to ask you first about things so then I can figure out what I think about it. You know, I don't know if you even realize
Very
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, nice work.
That's a fun exercise.
That was so inspiring. Cool. Yeah. So a couple things that really I felt really moved by that I feel like we could all use more of is just how much our diversity contributes to a stronger whole. And so when we look out in the world and see people shining and people contributing, and then we shrink in reactivity to that, in envy, jealousy, comparison, which is like a really human mechanism. Part of what was so sweet watching you go back and forth was like, wow, this thing you have that I don't have that makes me better, that calls me forward, that inspires me. And, oh, wow, that thing I feel self-conscious about that I don't really like about myself is actually contributing and is benefiting you. So there's those two things. It's like each of us are our own little cell within the body of the world. And the more we that we can be, the more we contribute to each other and the stronger we are collectively. And sometimes the very things that we feel like make us kind of weird or not enough or whatever are our biggest gifts and our biggest contributions. They're our unique humanity.
Yeah.
Great teaching, Chela.
Really, it is. And it kind of harkens back to something that you said just before, which was like, our culture is so individualistic. And from an individualistic lens, you have to be everything to yourself.
Exactly.
So you have to be good at everything. There's no trade. There's no being a cell in a greater body. And literally what you're pointing to is how broken that is. You can't celebrate your difference or lean into your gifts if you have to be everything yourself.
Well, my metaphor for that is the one big nervous system.
Yeah.
We're in one big nervous system. And if you think about our own nervous system, there's different parts of the brain that specialize in different things. And if we can let ourselves be in one big nervous system, we can let ourselves be the specialist. And then in the areas where we're not as resourced or not as good, we can, if someone else can be the specialist in that, and then we can support each other. And that's the only way it's going to work. Yeah. But instead, if you have to be perfect at every single function within that thing, it's just not going to happen. So there has to be this process of like learning about your gifts and then learning what the supports look like and learning about other people's gifts. And yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. And then they all interrelate too, right? So we talk about, as we're naming the cells in this wider nervous system or wider body collectively, but then these different areas that we're exploring within ourselves, that's our own regenerative ecosystem for our calling. So it's like, oh, if I'm trying to do all the things and be all the skills versus really owning where my passion and meaning is, really owning my gifts and then contributing those in unique ways, it's like the more aligned and the more me I am, the more unique and specialized my contribution gets to be. And for some people, the contribution is generalized. It's not like the aim is be unique. A couple other things I'd like to say about contribution for our listeners is that because this was a relational practice, but there are lots of different ways that we can check for how we're contributing. And just like in the other areas, there can be barriers for how we're checking. Like we had talked about, with care work, if we undervalue something over another. But one of the things that we're always doing is we're unconsciously scanning for how things are going. And so in our contribution, we have an unconscious automatic sonar that's scanning for, am I making a difference here? And sometimes, especially when we're in a shift, with the expression of our call, that scan will be inaccurate.
That's so
And
helpful.
that scan isn't checking for the right thing, or we're not getting the right information. So for listeners, interviewing people, that's a great way to check. Noticing how your expression and your skills are shifting, like how you're actually behaviorally engaging things in the world. And then, okay, what are you intentionally checking for to know if you are making the impact that you want to be making? And then sometimes, when I first wrote the show, like quite literally, I didn't think I would ever perform it. It was entirely for me. The first performance I did, I invited like 50 of my closest friends and family, and I felt like they were doing me a favor. And it just felt so self-indulgent. And then I finished the performance, and everybody looked like they were on a blend of MDMA and magic mushrooms, and they had this massive state experience. And I was like, oh, this is what I do now. And ever since then, it's been learning how to step into this particular call and let it contribute to people and listen. So I listen what people say happens when they see that show or when they hear me talk about things. And that has to be my new checkpoint of like, how's it rippling?
Yeah. This is so mind blowing for me because it's so obvious. And for some reason, I just never thought of it this way. I mean, all of us do this, but we go through the world with this like pre-made idea of like what contribution looks like, what success looks like. And you're kind of like, am I doing the thing that leads to that all the time? Even if you've changed.
And I can see how this really connects to the very first speech you're talking about, the meaning and values. Like, it's worth going through a process of getting clear about what your values are and what's meaningful for you. And then to look and see it, because I'm wondering if you're like the average listener, you're listening to this and you're thinking about, well, what is my contribution? Sometimes it's not so clear. Sometimes it's like you're in an obvious service capacity or you're in an obvious creative capacity, but sometimes you're not sure, But if you connect to what's your sense of what's meaning and what's valuable, then you're like, well, are you, for example, one contribution could be, am I helping spread those values out in the world through the way I am? That's legit. Mm-hmm. And then but to know that is what your contribution is, and to be able to name that and see that, so then you can be like, rest back and let it happen more unbidden, as opposed to be in a place of like, I don't know, or I'm not doing anything,
Yeah. Totally. And asking the world for feedback, first of all, is so scary. Like, I trusted, because of your relationship and your capacity, that I could lead you through that exercise and you'd be game, but also that it would probably feel like pretty intimate to be able to go like, oh, you've cheered in this way. But to go out and ask people like, hey, what do you see are the ways that I contribute to you out in the world? That's really vulnerable, because most of us are like, well, my big secret fear is that I'm a piece of shit and everybody will be like, nothing, you got nothing. Yeah. But mostly that's not what happens. And then we can be delighted. And then if you're in a place that's really tangible. So my first career, I owned a hair salon for 8 years. And one of the things, what's that?
I love that. That is so perfect.
It was so fun. I really cut my teeth on entrepreneurship and team building and creativity. And, so one of the practices that we had there that I didn't know any other salon that did is we did callbacks. So we called back every single client 2 days after they had their hair done to ask how it was working. And it did a number of things. Obviously, it increased retention. It also had people come back in to get their hair fixed if they didn't like it, which also increased retention. It also, we were a really young team. We were young staff. I started the salon when I was 19. I didn't have a hairdressing license at the time. Story for another time. The rest of my team were all really young apprentices. And so it helped people really build their skills fast to see where things were working and not working. But it also helped to build confidence. And so, because then they go like, yeah, I love it. So you're not wondering, what are these creative skills that I'm employing, right? But what was interesting is we always had some stylists who had so much resistance to this practice. And they were like, I just don't want to know. But what that actually was revealing was how much fear there was around being rejected, around not being competent, around other people not liking their work. And so it became an accelerator for building that confidence. So at first it was very scary to do, but then over time, their confidence would really, really build, because they'd go, oh, these things that I make up about how much better that should have been, or that client didn't like me, or it was a miss, it's strengthened. And so for our listeners, few things to kind of integrate this piece around contribution. One, What are the ways in which you're maybe valuing or looking for what you're contributing to as a default, kind of unconsciously, that you weren't aware of, that maybe this conversation helped shine light on? What are the ways in which you do want to be contributing? And what is a tangible, specific way that you can check for feedback on that, ask for feedback and invite it in? Not just so that you know where you are, but you actually build your confidence in knowing that you're contributing in ways that matter.
Yeah, well, what I really love about this too is that when you're saying contribution, you don't just mean the thing you are doing in the world. You mean you're being in the world. Like you can like just truly connect to the true signal of who you are and let that shine. That is a contribution.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only way to see what that is to have the feedback of your friends in your community be able to like say what they, just like what we did, to tell you, this is what I see. And then if you go through that, then you could have more confidence to then shine more. And then even to connect it to what you're doing materially in the world in terms of your job and the way you're spending your time.
Yeah. Beautiful. Do we have time for one more?
Totally. Yes. We gotta finish off the 4. Wait, so let's recap. The first one is
interiority, meaning.
Interiority, meaning. Second was aptitude.
Aptitude, how you're actually doing the thing.
Yes.
Third is contribution.
Contribution.
And give us the 4th.
4th is regeneration or resourcing. Because if we are just like, oh, I got all the meaning, passion, values. Yeah, I'm doing that out in the world. Yes, it's making a difference.
Burned out, I'm dying.
And I'm burned out, I'm dying, which is most people. So again, under capitalism, when we have the lens that we need to grow constantly, the only way for that to happen is to be using resources of others, right? So it's an extractive system. And so that is the wider system that we're under. It's the system we internalize, and it's the system that most of us carry out. So to actually have your calling be regenerative, you need to be being fed. Now, what's tricky is that most of us actually miss the amount of resourcing available to us and around us because we're so focused on money. Now, I have no problem with being focused on money.
We're focused on money, and we're focused on we need to do it all ourselves.
We need to, yeah, exactly. And like asking for help, collaborating, resource sharing, that is the future. That's what we need to prioritize above all else, or these other parts of our calling just don't have room. They'll just wither away and die. And what has been so interesting in my coaching career is like very early on when I started to see like if somebody's kind of topic and focus was like, I just want to make as much money as possible. I'd be like, I'm just not interested. Like, and yet I want people to make money and be resourced, but I just kept going like, what is it about the ones where that's the primary focus? It's just like it didn't jive with my values, with my sense of meaning. And over time, I really realized how much it's because I could feel the pain of a world that's not co-resourcing. So in this area, one can be, I make money. So we do look at, okay, so how am I being remunerated for what I'm doing? And again, if your call is in the area of your professional vocational expression, that's something to really pay attention to. What I really notice is that people who have communal values, liberatory values, who care about their neighbors, who care about community, who care about justice, there's often shadow and challenge around money and just making it because of the pain that we see it causes within an unjust system. So that's always some of the work, I think, for all of us is, well, what is our relationship to being paid? How are we structuring our lives and our offerings and how we're navigating this so that we have the material resources that we need to be able to operate in the world as it is? And then the other pieces are looking at, well, what are the resources that I actually need, right? So we can have the underinflated, but then we can also have the overinflated, which is what we see when we look around and go, oh, well, the people with the most wealth, they're just still working at getting more wealth. Like, what's with the hungry ghost happening in this room? It's like we don't have an enough. And I think we all need that. Like, what actually is enough that I can relax into? How do I actually move through the world from a place of sufficiency instead of a place of scarcity, no matter how much I have? So in this territory, what I love to encourage us to do, and this is more like a write down a list. I don't know if you guys will do that in this session, but this is what I would invite our listeners to spend a little bit of time doing, is first you make a list of all of your assets. Now, by assets, I'm going to expand that beyond how we kind of currently think of assets, but it's like any material support that you have that you're living off of. And most of us don't think about a lot of them. And all the ways that from like this microphone in front of me, this computer that I have, this house that I'm in, like all of these things that I have, and how other people have contributed to the making, the manufacturing. And so it's like we make a list of what we have so we can go, oh, I'm resourced. I've got some things. Even if I look at my neighbor and I don't have anywhere near as much as they do, or I have some vision for myself and it's way under that. It's like, what do I currently have that I can rest in, that is stabilizing, that is resourcing? And as I make that list, I also expand my awareness to go, whoa, so many people contributed to this. So I'm feeling both my resourcing, my sufficiency, but I'm also part of a wider ecosystem and I'm part of a wider net of care. And so just like all of these, we start with what we have and then we expand out. It's like, wow, I've got all these things. Okay. And so this is like not what do I not have, but what do I need to be able to have these other 4 areas really humming? So is there resourcing that I need? Are there material things that I need? Is there support that I need? Are there opportunities that would help me? So we start to kind of look for, wow, if I was just so resourced that I could freely give my gifts, freely meet my call, what are those? So for me, my career, when we talked about like big signal, like one of the things that has been it's just like, it just makes me go, it's like, because like I've worked with so many clients who like multi-million-dollar companies, hundreds of thousands of people on their list. Like I'm just like in that space, right? I got a little list. I've never prioritized building that list. I've had like stupid shame about that because I have some like thing that is what's going to be resourcing, but I've never had to in where I was contributing.
Yeah.
So where my work came from has primarily been word of mouth, or people hear about me and then they read something I wrote or they watch me on a thing and then they hire me. So it's like, if I'm looking over here, this is to anybody, your list size, your like size, whether or not your stuff's going viral, if you're looking at those kinds of external things. But I was deeply resourced by my relationships and my track record. That is a resourcing source. Because for me, anytime I would have the occasional thing go viral or others, and I would actually find it overwhelming. I'm like, I'm over here doing this depth work thing, and now I got to respond to all this stuff. And then I'd go like this. And then I'd like berate myself for not doing that. Well, in this shift, I'm going, oh, well, now I'm actually kind of playing in a different channel where having more reach and contact is actually part of where the expression wants to go. But I can't connect with people on the level of depth and intimacy and like really receiving who they are in a way that I used to. So like things shift. And that's where really being clear on how we're going to be resourced, what really matters to us and all of these pieces versus vanity metrics, because before, anytime I'd be like, oh, I got to go grow this thing. And then I'm like, this just feels egoic. Like, I don't want, why? And now it doesn't feel egoic because it feels like it's actually part of the call. Exactly. And so if you think I need to go do this thing, whether it's earn a lot of money or have a lot of reach or have a lot of attention or have a lot of likes, like whatever these external metrics are that you believe are going to give you something, it's like, check that. Because we're kind of being indoctrinated constantly. And I know so many artists where they're like, I actually want to move slow. And I'd rather have more intimate community than be all over the place. And everybody's telling me I got to post all this, but I don't want to do that because it's tiring. Then don't do that thing.
I mean, we're allowed to not do that thing?
We're allowed to not do that thing.
Give us all permission to not do that thing.
Yeah, don't do that thing. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is like human resourcing are relationships, and relationships where we feel like we can be fully who we are and people are championing us. And the more in alignment, by the way, with all these things that we are, the more other people are going to be interested in championing what you're up to, because they're going to see like your signal's clean. They're going to go like, yeah, that thing, let's champion that thing. But if we feel like we should be everything all the time, be good at everything, do everything, be everywhere, then there's a constant feeling of deficit. There's a constant feeling of, oh, there's somewhere I'm supposed to arrive at, which isn't accurate, and I am falling short of that. And I believe the more that we are in forms of community resourcing and community care and are supported relationally, even for the introverts amongst us, like it doesn't mean more is better, but relationships where you can actually lean on each other and trust each other and you feel like, oh, I'm held in something, the more that you can actually be self-expressed and not be afraid of how the world's going to receive that, because we got each other. And the more we can go like, hey, I need this resource. I need this opportunity. Do you have connections? Do you have a couch I can sleep on? Do you have, operational support? Do you like whatever? So it's like, we just got to keep knitting together.
Oh my God. I mean, you're speaking my language, and it's just so inspiring to hear you talk about this, because what I see and what we all see is like, I know I long for that. And I know a lot of people who long for that, and a lot of really good, well-intentioned people who would be that contributor and are that they do contribute to support their friends in as best they can in the milieu they're at, but they're also overwhelmed by a system that makes too many demands, by these stressful environments, by like flows in the culture that are moving against that are about trying to break that down and atomize you. And it's just so hard. It's like very much like in Buddhism, they talk about going against the stream of unconsciousness, of kind of like just mindless capitalist buildup that is like the culture's priorities. It's shooting you downstream this way. And you have to at first turn around and try to go against that. That's what it feels like being in the city, being like that. And so, I mean, I think this is the role of practice is so important in this, to bring it to meditation and to any practice. Like a spiritual practice grounds you in your own presence and capacity to be who you are, to then stand in the middle of that stream and ultimately begin to send out a different signal. And you do that one person at a time, in one community at a time, and you can see how it could potentially grow. And so this is the movement we're in. I feel like that you're articulating here. And that's definitely what we're here about the podcast.
Yeah. And I just love, I feel like everyone has kind of like ideas around calling and purpose, and either you have one or you don't, or it's changing or you're pivoting. But I just love how you've peeled it apart into these four. It's like so intuitive, but even just like having these four practices that are actually quite simple, like immediately brings a lot of clarity to the flow, and helps to carve out things that you're worried about that actually stop being worries once you clarify these four kind of envelopes of your being.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Chela. Is there somewhere people could, we're going to put them onto your website and resource, and I want you to say a little bit about that, but even that framework you offered, where you've spoken about that or you've written about that, so people can see that again and even explore some of those practices again.
Yeah, well, I will pull something together for you because depending on when this airs, I'm in the midst of hospicing my whole coaching practice, including this whole body of work. And the body of work is going to, I think, be revived into another form. Currently, because of the depth work I've done, it's all really kind of needs me there. And so that's part of what I'm doing, is I'm hospicing the things that need me there. So we'll see. I hope to have something I can point people to. But yeah, what I would say about this process and what I'm doing is I feel like where I'm called to more and more is connecting with and talking about these things in a way that connects people to each other and connects resources to each other and opens us to how we actually can evolve our own identities so that we're co-creating with life and co-creating with each other in more resourced ways. So the places to find me, should I tell you about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a Substack. It's called Wisdotainment. My website is cheladavison.com. And I'm just like so excited about the new brand and expression that is coming into the world. So it's probably there by the time you're watching, listening to this. And then I have a show. It's called A Little Bit Much. And it is all around identity formation, personal development, striving after the things, trying to become somebody, and then realizing that's a cosmic joke. And it's funny and it's touching and it's raw. And I'm probably on tour or on tour soon. Yeah, when you're hearing this. So you can find that out about that at both Wisdotainment and on my website.
My friend, I so appreciate you. I so enjoyed this talk. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. This was such a joy, and just like where we went and what you shared. And I really appreciate this space.
Thanks for adventuring with us. Pop over to mindbodpod.com and let us know in the comments how this episode landed for you. Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. And if you want to support our crazy adventures, get fun perks and exclusives along the way, join us as a paid subscriber. See you next week.